Greetings, my family and friends. Back to the shed of eternal possibilities. And a few more poems. I hope you're all okay, everyone. I hope your Sunday's going well. To all the family members and subscribers, thank you as always for being here. I appreciate you all. Please keep the comments coming. Right folks, some more poems now of a darker nature. And these are from my book called Ordo Strigoi Vii, a vampire journal. There it is, everyone. The Ordo Strigoi Vii are the living vampires. These are poems and short stories about vampires from the old world to the modern day. Intended to make you question your own mortality and for you to ponder if these creatures of the night actually exist. I penned this whilst I was in Whitby in North Yorkshire, the birthplace of Dracula. Whitby lends itself nicely with its incredible atmosphere along the old cobbled roads, with smoke mingling and appearing to dance like ethereal spirits in the night. Right, everybody, the first one is called Nosferatu. This one is a free verse one. So here it goes, folks. Nosferatu. From the darkness he appears, the smell of death. Earth from some far-off distant land on his hands. From the ornate casket his resting place, standing alive, yet dead for many centuries. His flesh the colour of a grave-bound corpse, dark eyes that pierce through to your heart. The heart that pumps the precious blood through veins, to the pulsing neck which will quench his thirst. The imposing figure standing tall against the night, cape rippling in the breeze, the full moon in his eyes, sniffing at the cold night air, the scent of prey, listening for footsteps along the cobbled roads. At the bottom of the steps, with their habit high up above, drifting smoke from chimneys swirling, filling the air, the scent of burning driftwood mixed with peat, gaslights reflecting on the wet cobbled streets, the board inn filled with vibrant life, fishermen enjoying an ale after a hard day hauling nets. But what awaits them as they drink their last is the vampire, who has to quench his thirst too. He sniffs the air again and walks down Church Street. Someone has just stumbled by the Black Horse Inn. The vampire swoops and attacks his unsuspecting prey. In powerful arms he pulls back into the Black Horse Yard. Blood-stained teeth clamp on vein, biting through flesh, drinking the sweet red nectar, bringing death to life. Once again another life being carried into death's dark grip. The vampire renewed, new life now flowing through his body, listening and looking for the next to satisfy his thirst. He scents a sweet perfume pervading the cold night air. A lady carrying a flagon of ale for her husband. The White Horse Yard is where she stands. It's not far from her home, but too far to escape. The vampire pounces again, teeth once again clamp the vein. The lady, looking into his hypnotic eyes, is powerless. Does he drain her life, or does he let her live eternally? To share the spoils of the night with him, and eternity as his bride. Death it is. He drains her, and her life oozes into the eternal night. The lifeless body, now going cold, lays in lifeless repose. The beer from the flagon runs between the cobbles. Her life was drained from that once pulsating vein. The vampire stares into the sky, sensing the coming dawn. He knows he must return to the ornate casket, to feel his native earth envelop his skin once again. Another daylight sleep, another night to awake. He moves with grace and silent gait across the cobbles, up the steps towards the abbey's resting place. The vampire turns and looks over the old town. His cold, dark heart is pulsating with fresh blood. Back to his casket in the shadow of the abbey again. What fools, who have no idea where the vampire lies. In an ornate casket in the cliff-top graveyard. The undead is only sleeping amongst those who are eternally dead. Right folks, that's that one over, and I hope you enjoyed it. Right, this one is called the Sucrient. And the Sucrient is a blood-sucking creature again, which is from the Caribbean. So, for centuries now in darkness, from the Caribbean islands of the earth, yet having dwelt in many countries since my second ignoble birth, a Soucrient happened upon me. I tried to run but sadly fell. It was then that she caught me, condemning me to a living hell. From country after country, so many dead lay in my wake, as I need to feed on living bodies, always hunting for lives to take. My movements are clothed in darkness, in the hidden places of the towns. Those where only the lonely go is the place where I am found. In every yard and every alley I move silently, there is no sound. People often think they have found refuge, when in reality it is death they've found. Walking along the same old paths I have walked on many centuries before, always alert and ready to pounce as people walk towards their door. The old inns are the best places, people so drunkenly falling about. There the pickings are ever so easy, nobody is aware of their final shout. I may very well have passed you by, I may even have stared into your eye, but I know the ones to let go when it's not yet their time to die. I know that I have life eternal. Many are the times I sit and cry, as I continue to live forever, watching as my loved ones die. To be loved, but not to give your all, knowing well it will end in pain, as I move on from person to person, trying to rekindle what love is again. Today I stand here a Sucrient, which I shall forevermore be. One of those long and hopeless nights I may be waiting outside your door. But I will not let you suffer the same fate. I will take your life from you. My existence will last forever, but for you your life is through. I have become a vicious killing monster. It's nothing personal, I just need to survive. That precious blood that flows in your vein is the food that keeps me alive. So beware if you are feeling down. thinking you'd be better off dead, because a Soucrient will be there for you as soon as those words have been said. I hope you enjoyed that one, folks, and I hope it doesn't give you any sleepless nights. So, there we go, my friends. Here, I'm considering doing this, but as you all know, my voice isn't the best in the world. So, I'm looking for a story called Nathaniel, which, if you will bid me the time, I will read this one to you. So we'll begin. This is Nathaniel. I found myself in the old fishing port of Whitby, which is situated on the northeastern coast of England. I had come from my native West Yorkshire home in Huddersfield to start a new adventure, a new life in the town. I could not think of anywhere better to be. I went in search of Whitby jet, which had become part of the mourning attire for Queen Victoria after the sudden death of her husband, Prince Albert. There was money to be made from Whitby jet, and also from the many fossils that can be found along that coast. There was one night which was very dark and stormy. The wind was blowing at gale force as it came in across the sea. There were ships within the harbour walls which were being tossed and blown around like pieces of cork. However, they did have much more protection than those who were out on the sea having to sail through it. There were mountainous waves which came ashore, crashing and thundering into the harbour entrance between the two piers. Both lighthouses shone their message of warning to the ships, warning of their impending doom on the rocks as they were tossed and blown towards that shore. The wind was driving fiercely over the harbour walls, was causing the sand to move in a most unusual way, causing a serpentine pattern to undulate and arch as it moved across the beach. I was staying in an old fisherman's cottage on Henrietta Street, which was known locally as Pier Cottage. The cottage always looked as though it was shrouded in an eerie smoke, which came from Fortune's Kipper Smokery, which is just at the other side of the road. Sometimes the smoke that gathers around the old street light has the appearance of some ethereal spirit dancing in the night air. There was a window in the cottage which led out onto a balcony overlooking Tate Hill Sands, the place where in Bram Stoker's book Dracula the ship Demeter had run aground. During a violent storm, not unlike the storm which was raging that night. Waves were crashing like thunder into the breakwater. Great plumes of spray were sent high into the night air. The wind was howling, making a very eerie sound, as it seemed to have a ghostly noise as it passed through the red pan-tiled roofs. Although I felt very comfortable in my cottage, I had a strange feeling of uneasiness at the violence of the storm outside. I lit some candles and threw some driftwood logs onto the fire, spat and crackled as the flames took hold of them. It brought a warm but eerie glow into the cottage, as it was dancing across the walls. The icy wind which blew from the North Sea brought hail, which tapped against my window. Tap, tap, tap. Lightning flashed across the bay and appeared to be quenched in the seething cauldron that was the sea. I sat down in front of the fire which was roaring away in the grate. I observed the flames. They were reflected in the polished brass of the fender around the hearth. I took some tobacco from my pouch, cut some off and rubbed it in my hands before packing it into the pipe. I put a taper into the flames, and as it lit I put it to my pipe and began to draw on it until the tobacco was alight. I blew the smoke towards the ceiling with some satisfaction. As I listened to the howling of the wind and the constant tapping of the hail on the window pane, I felt very much at peace with my surroundings. I poured myself a large glass of whisky from an old decanter and sipped at it, savouring every drop. I felt a total and complete calm fall over me, which is strange in the midst of such a violent storm outside the window. I gazed into the fire and began to drift away. The wind continued to howl, the hail tapped on the window pane. My mind began to think about those poor souls who were out at sea. I must have gone to sleep because I awoke to what sounded to be a more insistent tapping. I stared through my sleep-dulled eyes and I could see what appeared to be a man stood on the balcony outside, tapping at the glass. My eyes regained their focus and I could see that he was a very tall man, and gaunt in appearance, dressed from head to foot in black, with a cloak which had its collar up against the wind. Looking down to his feet, he had a pair of black shoes on, which looked to have mud on them. I observed his hands, which were very slender, with long pointed fingernails. He had sunken cheeks, which were made more noticeable because of his high cheekbones. His eyes were as black as Whitby jet, and appeared lifeless. Even on the occasion as the moonlight caught them from behind the passing clouds, there was no sparkle, just cold, dead eyes. His hair was shoulder length and straight, was jet black in colour again, shining in the moonlight. The blackness of his hair framed a very pale complexion. He stood there, one hand tapping at the window, while the other hand hung at his side. He carried on tapping at the window pane and stared at me with those dark eyes, which I must say I found unnerving. I knew not what he was seeing, as he appeared to be looking me up from top to bottom. He also looked into all the corners of the room, tap, 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 on the window pane, and a single movement. He appeared to gesture me towards the window. I was unable to avert my eyes. Felt compelled to look into those eyes which seemed to be looking directly into my soul. I was transfixed and could do nothing but obey his will. I walked towards the window. I tried to avert my eyes, but he seemed to have me hypnotised. He reached out his arm and held up his hand, with his finger beckoning me to open the window. I noticed that even though the wind howled around him, he remained motionless. Not even a single hair of his head was moving. My hand stretched out towards the catch on the window, and I was powerless to do any other. I opened the catch and slowly opened the window and felt obliged to tell him to enter the room. He stepped into the room, and he seemed to glide over towards the fire and stood by the mantelpiece. He sat opposite me in the fireside chair and stared at me with those dark but strangely dead eyes. He said, "My name is Nathaniel, and I have been in Whitby for what seems like centuries. I often wander the cold streets at night looking for people who are willing to invite me into their home." He spoke again, saying, "It's such a foul evening out there, and it's so kind of you to let me share the warmth of your fire and to give me some company. I would like to offer you the chance to join me on the journey of an eternity." He walked around the room. Well, when I say walked, he appeared to glide. "This journey will give you everything, but it will cost you everything. So tell me, would you care to come with me?" I was not sure, and I wanted to know more of what this journey was. I asked Nathaniel to tell me more and offer him a drink of my fine malt whisky. Nathaniel said that he never drank spirits or wine. I offered him something to eat, to warm him up, and Nathaniel said, "I have already eaten, but thank you." The room, bathed in candlelight and the glow from the fire, was very, very cosy. We chatted about this journey. Nathaniel told me of his travels around the world in times past, of his visits to the opera houses of Milan, the ballet theatres of Paris, the playhouses of London. This before he decided to live in the quaint old seaport of Whitby. His story was fascinating. It certainly caught my imagination. This man had been and seen and done more than most people can ever dream about. I said, "Yes, I will join you on the journey because you have excited my mind, and you could open up a new world for me." Then, as if from nowhere, he was stood directly in front of me, with those dark but dead eyes looking directly at me. He towered above me. I looked upon his face, which was deathly pale. His thin lips parted to reveal what looked like fangs protruding from his upper jaw. His face was emotionless. I was powerless and could only stare into his jet black eyes. He reached forward and placed a hand upon my shoulder, while the other remained at his side. The hand on my shoulder had a touch so gentle that I could scarcely feel it there at all. My heart began to race. It was scary, but yet so compelling in the candlelight. I had never met anyone like him before. Then he stooped, and I could smell the aroma of the grave upon his skin. He sniffed at my flesh and breathed in deeply, before moving closer to me, until his cheek was touching my cheek. He was as cold as marble, like one who was dead. He then moved towards my neck. It was then that I felt those fangs sink deep into my vein, followed by the sound of him drinking my life's blood. I could hear him sigh with deep satisfaction. The last thing I remember was passing into blackness. I awoke the very next evening after the sun had gone down. The night was calm. The violent storm of the previous day had passed inland and across the North Yorkshire moors. I looked out across the bay through the twin piers of the lighthouse. They were still flashing out their warnings to the ships to beware of the dangerous rocks. It was just like any other evening, with the exception that I had woken with an incredible thirst for human blood. I wanted to go out onto the cobbled roads of the town and into the dark alleyways of Whitby, with all its hiding places. As I walked down Argument Yard, I found my first victim, who was on his way home after spending a few hours at the White Horse and Griffin Inn. I dispatched him into the jaws of death. Nathaniel had gone somewhere into the night after starting me out on this eternal journey, but he left behind a vampire. So, thank you everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard there. I hope the story was riveting enough for you. Right everyone, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, hit the like button, leave a comment in the box below, hit the bell icon for any future uploads, and above all, if you've not yet subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so, or else I'll send Pinhead round to find you. Take it easy everyone, and enjoy the rest of Sunday. Namaste. Bye for now, from me and Pinhead.